Well, good evening, WNBA and LA Sparks fans. Happy Wednesday evening to you folks, and welcome into the LA Sparks 365 Network, your 24/7 365 comprehensive home of the WNBA and your two-time WNBA champion Los Angeles Sparks. And welcome in, folks, to the flagship show of the network here that is called Sparks 365. Hello, everybody, and welcome into tonight's edition of the LA Sparks 365 Network alongside Chris Amanci from the Anaheim Studios up in Anaheim, California. Cal McClure joining you folks here from Studio 171 in San Diego. Chris, good evening, man. Off night last night, had radio show last night. Another tough way to go down in flames last night in Atlanta. But other than that, man, how's it been going tonight?
I'm hanging here good.
Good to hear, man. Again, folks, we kind of apologize for kind of coming on the air a bit late tonight again. We were taking care of a few things on Instagram today with a few of our friends that are sports editors out there. So we're doing a few collabs with each other just to kind of to know each other a bit better and stuff. But again, folks, also with myself running 20 different things at one time, it's kind of hard to kind of make time right now for the network. But we're squeezing it in, folks, in some very small fashion. All right, Chris, we're going to get to some opening tip-off headlines here, man. We're going to cover last night's game. We're going to talk about Friday's game, Chris, and talk about what's occurring, what could be occurring on June 16th as well, somewhere close to your house. And also, above all, talk about the All-Star game, because Chris is open to the All-Star game. We'll talk about the All-Star game voting and how you guys can involve and vote for your favorite players later in the program. And, of course, folks, you guys can hit us up on Twitter at LASparks365. Okay, Chris, we're going to dive in here and kind of, Chris, put a bow on another tough game to watch last night for the Los Angeles Sparks, who, Chris, once again, like they did last year, dipped below the 500 mark with their second straight loss as they fall to Erica de Sosa and the Atlanta Dream. 93-85. The player stats, Chris, Jantel Lavender, Chris, who a lot of people are saying that this is her breakout year, man, and right now it looks like she's having her breakout year so far. 21 points, Nneka Ogwumike, 12 rebounds, Lindsey Harding, 9 assists, 2 players tied with 3 steals, and Candace Parker, 1 block. And for Atlanta, Erica de Sosa, 27 points, Sancho Little, 12 rebounds, Shawnee Schimmel, 7 assists, Angel McCoughtry, 3 steals, and 2 players tied with 2 blocks. Well, Chris, it was basically a tale of 2 games. It was basically, man, the same sort of story we saw last on Sunday. The Sparks jumping out to a quick first quarter lead. You take Candace Parker out to rest her, and you fall behind by a substantial lead because you try to battle back, and it's just basically, man, too little too late. But again, man, hey, it's a hot start, man, but it just seems like once quarter one ends, the team looks dysfunctional because when you take Parker out, Chris, it looks like no one else steps up to the plate. And that's why, Chris, it seems like a lot of games fall on Candace Parker's shoulders because it seems like she does all the heavy lifting, man, and no one else is there to back her up and also do some heavy lifting, man. So looking back at last night, tough way to go down, man, playing a tough Atlanta team, Chris, and also knowing, man, that the Sparks have not won a game in Atlanta since 2009, I want to say. Tough way to go down last night, man. What did you take away from yesterday's loss down there in hot Atlanta, Georgia?
The Sparks look good. They scored 20, I think, in 3 of the 4 quarters. Or I think they scored 20 in each quarter. They had the petition law locked up, but they didn't get the win. But they look good out there. But Seb, I think it was second quarter or third quarter, I forgot. They went on a big, long drought of not scoring, and that was the difference in the game right there.
Yeah, Chris, I mean, the Sparks led after 1 quarter of play 23-18, if my memory serves me right here. And, yes, they were up 23-18, Chris, but they gave up 14 consecutive points to begin the second quarter, man. They gave up a 14-0 run to begin that second quarter, Chris. That's what basically kind of doomed them in, Chris. They were down by 3 at halftime, so you knew it was still a substantial close game at least at halftime. Then, of course, Chris, the wheels on the bus fall off towards the end. But, Chris, I will say this, man. I mean, I caught the first half of the game when I was at home before I left to do my radio show last night. And, I mean, you know, the team, Chris, they looked good last night. It's just that I don't know, like, what the deal is. I mean, it just looks like, man, whenever Ross takes Parker out to rest, no one else steps up to the plate, Chris, and basically LA gets run over by a mad train, it looks like. And I don't know what the deal is, man, if there's some sort of mindset. No, I know that Candace Chris brings a lot to the table when she's out there, you know, her scoring and her presence out there, Chris, but it looks like, man, when you take your presence off the court on the bench, it's like it's a bunch of nobodies out there. Everyone's standing around, Chris, and they look like traffic cones out there because there was no scoring in that early quarter because Chris Parker was out until that run ended. I think midway through the quarter to get some time off and some rest finally, man. But I mean, it just looks like, man, I'll say it again, man, but it looks like a kind of a repeat of last year where it's Parker versus the other team, and when she goes out, don't even bother showing up, it looks like, because no one else comes to play after she goes out to take a breather.
Yep, agreed. And at least Georgetown Lavender helped out last night, but the Sparks fell short to the Atlanta Dream.
Now, Chris, yes, they did. They did fulfill and abide by the petition law, Chris. It's just that they got outworked with the law, Chris, because Atlanta put up 28 and 29 in quarters 2 and 3, Chris. So that was basically the doomsday right there. And I mean, Chris, they got back in the game they were down by 3. And they had to make a stop, man, and they didn't get the stop when they needed it the most. That's what put Atlanta, up by that many points, Chris. And there was no answer last night for either Erica De Sosa, who had 27 points, Chris, and or Sancho Little in the second half of the game, because it just looks like, man, I think LA was basically, it looked like LA just got run over by a truck. And, Chris, reading Candace Parker's quote here real quick, she says, "We gave up 68 points in the paint. That has to be a WNBA record. They were 34 for 46. You're not going to beat anyone giving up that many." Now, Chris, I would have to go back and do some digging here to see if we do have a record for points in the paint, Chris. But 68 of the 95 points, Chris, for Atlanta was in the paint last night. Where, Chris, on Sunday, it was LA owning the paint, Chris, and it was a whole other story, man. And, I mean, it was either, I don't know what the deal was, Chris, and I don't know right now if there's a way to fix this sinking ship. Because you know that, Chris, with Tolliver leaving following Sunday's game back to Slovakia, yes, Chris, there's what looks like, Chris, 2 cupcake wins, Tulsa and San Antonio on the road. But then again, Chris, knowing LA, it could be a whole nother, that looks like a game. Chris, at this point in time, man, even those 2 games against Tulsa and the Stars, Chris, they look like must-win games because you didn't beat Washington, Chris, and above all, Chris, like I told Shorty Mama last night on our hangout after he had knocked out last night, is I've noticed that Phillips Arena, Chris, has sort of become the Rose Garden. That one building, Chris, the Sparks can't win in. Like how the Lakers can't win in Portland, the Sparks can't win in Atlanta. And I don't know what the deal is, man, but there's that one place, that one city, that one arena, Chris, that you struggle in the most. And in the Sparks case, it's any game you play in Atlanta, Chris. And above all, man, if the Sparks were to play Atlanta in the finals, you got to play in Atlanta. So, I mean, right now, man, it's just not looking good for LA playing in Atlanta. So I don't know what the deal is, man.
Yep, agreed. And if the Sparks meet Atlanta Dream in the WNBA Finals, and Atlanta Dream has home court advantage, good luck winning the WNBA championship if you can't win in Atlanta.
Yep, you got that one building, Chris. So I mean, that's the deal, folks. The Sparks and Dream, Chris, will not hook up again until August 5th, or August 8th, I should say, Chris, when the Sparks play them back home at Staples Center this upcoming, or in a few months from now, back in August to finish up the Eastern Conference commitments. Chris, we have a full slate. We have 2 games tomorrow and a full schedule on Friday night, Chris. Tomorrow night we've got the Mystics at the Sun at 4 o'clock, and then the Liberty will take on the Stars at 4 o'clock. And then on Friday, Chris, we've got the Fever at Mystics at 4 p.m. Phoenix visits Tulsa at 5 o'clock. The Sparks will visit Chicago at 5:30. And the Minnesota Lynx could be 8-0, Chris. They'll take on the Seattle Storm at 7 o'clock from the Key Arena on NBA TV. All right, Chris, moving gears now to the game on Friday, when the Sparks will take on the 5-1 and Eastern Conference leading Chicago Sky, Chris, which will be another uphill climb, man. You are facing the best team in the Eastern Conference, man, who's lost 1 game, and that is still, Chris, to unbeaten Minnesota. And you really now, man, have your work cut up for you, having to face Elena Del Don, the best player out there in her second year in the WNBA out of Delaware University. Sylvia Fowles, Chris, and I'll tell you what, man, Chris, where do we start? I mean, we know about, Sunday, the triple overtime marathon, and last night you get completely waxed in Atlanta, man. And, what does Friday, man, have in store for the Sparks?
I don't know.
Right now, man, there's really, no answer yet for that. Folks, will have more about the game tomorrow night on Sparks 365 here tomorrow night at 10 o'clock back here. On the LA Sparks 365 Network. But Chris, the only good thing I can say about this, Chris, is this is a homecoming of sorts for the MVP, Chris. Candace Parker, growing up in Chicago, she'll have her family and friends on hand at the LCA Arena tomorrow night, Chris. So, Chris, there's going to be that extra sort of oomph and push towards Candace tomorrow, Friday night, man, knowing that she's got mom and dad and Anthony and Marcus coming out to watch her play in her hometown of Chicago on Friday. So that's going to be there. So there'll be some extra motivation. And Chris, I know that we got tomorrow to kind of dice up the game again, man, but I'm staring at the blank box score for Friday, and it says, LA at Chicago, man, and there's just a bunch of bad thoughts right now in my mind that this could be a very ugly basketball game favoring Chicago by a long shot, I think, right now, because LA, I think, Chris, is just too depleted right now. There's maybe one player out there for LA, and everyone else is just standing there as a traffic cone, Chris. And your best three-point shooter is going to Slovakia again in a week, and your other one is on the bench out for 6 weeks, Chris. And you have someone that should be taking three-pointers, that should be helping out assist-wise or down low, taking three-pointers, Chris. So there's a lot of consternation right now, man. And Friday and Sunday need to go by quick because I have a very ill feeling about Friday and Sunday until next week when the Sparks play Tulsa in Tulsa.
Yep.
Chris, I know that we're all trying to stay positive right now, man, but I have to kind of do a little bit of a flip out right now because there's just so many things, Chris, that are plaguing the Sparks right now. When you've got the MVP, Chris, basically being, it's basically Chris 5-on-1 half the time. And it's true, because it seems like, Chris, whenever Parker leaves the game, they get boat raced in one quarter. They give up 14 straight, and they can't score after that. And, Tolliver is having her saga right now, Chris, either with her. Chris, what I have heard from Shorty Mama 24 is there's been talk, Chris, that KT has been crying rivers before and after practices, Chris, because she's so torn about what she wants to do. And she wants to be in LA, Chris, but she's hampered, though, by the burden, though, of going back overseas. So, Chris, we've got players injured. We've got one player playing for us, Chris, and now we've got emotional problems now with this team, Chris. So right now, a lot of dysfunction, Chris, and that might spell 2 more losses probably Friday and Sunday. But, Chris, in your mind, what can the Sparks do? What can LA do, Chris, though, to somehow, Chris, beat the Chicago Sky on Friday if there is any sort of solution?
Probably play a lot of defense. Don't turn the ball over. And just score 20 points in each quarter, and you should win the game.
Chris, I'm just going to say this real quick here, okay, because we know about the 2 games coming up, man. LA, you better have a 50-point lead in the first quarter to have any fighting shot to beat Chicago or Minnesota, Chris, because it seems that way, man, especially towards Sunday, because, Chris, every team that has had to play the Lynx, Chris, has had a lead, yes, at halftime, but they bowed down and let the Lynx, Chris, score 40 points in the third quarter to frickin' roll them all the time, man. So, Chris, in my view, man, the keys to the game, Chris, in my view, have been the same, but it's the truth, man, is you have to play defense, limit the turnovers, own the paint, and, Chris, if you're going to have a hot start, you've got to stay hot. You can't, score 20 in the first quarter, Chris, and let the opposition, Chris, score 14 to put you down by 10 early in the second quarter, Chris. And, I mean, the defense, Chris, in my view, has been there. I mean, yes, we know there was a bit of a lapse in the first overtime in Washington this past Sunday when Ivory threw that Harlem Globetrotters 3 up that it went in, man. So, Chris, you know what the defense side is there, man. It's just about your offensive production. I mean, because your production, Chris, is coming through one player, and that's the MVP, Candace Parker, Chris. Because right now, Chris, outside of Lavender on yesterday, man, it's been Parker leading the way, Chris, except for last game, scoring-wise. Because, like we say a lot, man, we'll say it again, but it's mainly, Chris, been one player suiting up for LA every game so far, and it's been the MVP, Chris. It hasn't been J-Lav. That was one game. Harding's been nowhere to be found, Chris. Elena Beard has disappeared, Chris. So there's some problems, Chris. Now, I'm not going to go as far, Chris, as saying that, like a lot of the fam, Chris, has said on Twitter that Coach Ross is on the hot seat and they want a new coach already, Chris. Relax. This is only 5 games in. Yes, we know, Chris, that we're flipping out here because we've got, 2 tough games ahead of us still to be played that are probably, Chris, going to be losses, but still, though, you've only played, what, Chris? You've played 5 games? 5 games?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Chris, we've played the least amount of games in the entire league, so I'm not losing any sleep over it yet, man. But, yes, Chris, yes, there's a bit of concern. Okay, it's okay to be concerned a little bit, man, because of what we know what's going on, Chris, because of how one situation, Chris, in particular, has been very mishandled. No one's been telling us what's going on with the team as far as injuries go. And there's some things to work out, man, but last I checked, man, it's a 34-game schedule, not a 5-game schedule. So inhale, exhale, take a deep breath, relax, we'll be fine. Post-Sunday. Anything after Sunday and past the 17th of June, we'll be fine, Chris. But until then, flip out a little bit, man, but just don't go overboard with your panic yet.
Yep.
So again, folks, the Sparks will pick up the Chicago Sky on Friday night, 5:30 p.m. on Time Warner Cable Sports. And finally, Chris, we get a game back on local television. Jim Watts and Mary Murphy back behind the microphone for the game on TWC Sportsnet and also on Time Warner Cable Deportes. Chris, then the following game after that, well, there's no need, Chris, to introduce the opponent because we already know, Chris, who they're facing, and, Chris, what the Sparks will be up against this upcoming Sunday, which is the defending WNBA Western Conference and WNBA champion, Chris, and the still unbeaten Minnesota Lynx. Chris, there's really no need to introduce Minnesota, Chris, because we know their track record. We know what they've done, Chris, and what they're probably going to be doing after in the WNBA Finals this year, Chris. That's going to be hoisting that trophy again, probably like normal, because no one else can stop them right now, man. Chris, right now the Lynx coming into the game on Sunday, barring if they stub their toe in Seattle, which I highly doubt happens, but you never know. Anything can happen in the season. Chris, should the Lynx be unbeaten still, they will be only 10 wins away from tying the Sparks of 0-1 for the longest winning streak in WNBA history when they started 10-0 last year. Chris, the Sparks started 18-0 in 2001. Chris, is there really any need to talk about this game, or should we basically just be like every other team, Chris, and bow down and let Minnesota win on Sunday, I guess?
Maybe.
Chris, I mean, I'm going to have to say it, man, but there's just too many things going on, man, that are hurting Los Angeles right now, between an injury to Candace Wiggins, the Tolliver saga going on, Chris, that is right now between Toller and the media department of the Sparks right now. It's both their problem, Chris. And with one player shooting up, man, I've got a worse feeling, Chris. One of those like go and puke moments, how your edits used to be, man, where I would go and puke sometimes when you were starting up making edits, man, because that is my ill feeling right now about Sunday. Now I know, Chris, it's a home game, and the Sparks beat Minnesota both times at home last year, but still, man, they're unbeaten. They've got 3 of the better players in the league in Maya Moore and Augustus and Whalen. And Chris, you could be looking at it. Chris, I'm not going to say it, man, but you could possibly be looking at perhaps your worst home court loss in your franchise history, perhaps, knowing the Lynx right now, what they're doing to opposing teams right now, Chris. or they're just beating the holy hell out of them right now.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
So, folks, 2 games, 2 tough games, and 2 teams you might see two teams you might be seeing in the WNBA Finals. Chicago on Friday, and of course, the Minnesota Lynx on Sunday at 12:30 p.m. at the Staples Center. Okay, Chris, before we get to the All-Star game, man, we've got some news regarding something we might be doing June 16th. I don't know if it's going to be affecting you. It's affecting myself, but I don't know, man. June 16th, what do you know about that date so far?
The only thing I know is someone over there in that studio is coming down to my city.
Folks, you might be catching Press Pass Sparks a week early. Reason being is I just got word today that the 16th of June, which will be the day before the game against Minnesota at home, sounds like I'll be going to Chris's neck of the woods to surprise him at work. No, I'll be going there, folks, to Knott's Berry Farm, but Chris, you told me, man, you're trying to sneak out of work, it sounds like, to join me there at the festivities, man. What are you thinking about doing over there, man?
I don't know.
So, folks, you might be catching a bit of some Press Pass Sparks a week early, folks. As you know that right now we're about 95% there to go into the game on June 22nd, which will be the official debut of Press Pass Sparks, June 22nd at Staples Center at 12:30 p.m. But I don't know, man. If you could take the day off from work to go to Disneyland this past December, I don't see why you can't do it again in 2 weeks on Monday.
Well, just to clean up aisle on Kamakag, that time, December, I already said I was going to go to Disneyland 26, but since work changed the schedule and I had to work the 26th, I already planned. We're going to Disneyland with me and you, and that's why I took a day off, so, yeah.
No, Chris, you can do it again. By the way, man, I just got retweeted by no one else, man, but Rashad Jackson about the tweet about Don Zimmer passing away today in the world of Major League Baseball. But, Chris, you know, man, I'm not really all big on political elections, Chris, or voting in elections because political nonsense chews up my brain, man. But the only thing I do vote for, man, is the All-Star games in pro sports because they're not rigged, they're not a bunch of damn lies like political BS is, man. But, Chris, we have got news that All-Star game voting for the WNBA, Chris, is going on right now, folks. So you have plenty of ways, folks, to vote for your favorite players to the All-Star game. You guys can do it via 3 ways right now. You guys can vote online at WNBA.com/ASB, WNBA.com/ASB. You guys can also vote on the WNBA Center Court app for your smartphone. And also, you guys can also do it for the first time ever, Chris. This is the first ever All-Star game in pro sports where you can vote for your players via social media. You guys can also vote on Facebook and Twitter. All you have to do is either mention the first and last name or the player's Twitter handle with the hashtag WNBA ballot to vote for your players, folks. You guys can vote up to 10 times per day on social media and vote once every 24 hours online and on the go. So, Chris, I mean, this All-Star game, Chris, continues to be the reason why, Chris, I prefer this All-Star game over any other All-Star game in pro sports. Because, Chris, now you can vote for your favorite players, man, via social media now, Chris. So, Chris, how many times have you voted so far, and how many times a day do you vote for the WNBA All-Star team?
Well, so far I haven't been tweeting. I only tweeted like 1 time, but I want to be getting into the hang of it and tweeting and voting.
Wait, so you're not going to vote for your players to go to the WNBA All-Star game on social media?
For what?
So you're not going to be voting for anybody on social media?
Well, I haven't tweeted yet. Well, I did one person. That was Mickey Harrison.
Well, you got to pick up the pace, man. We got to get our Spark players there, folks. But again, there are 3 main ways, folks. Yes, there are 3 ways you guys can vote for your favorite Sparks players or WNBA players, folks. And you guys can vote online at WNBA.com/ASB, WNBA.com/ASB. You guys can vote on the go on your WNBA Center Court app. And go there and vote once per day. And also you guys can, again, for the first time ever, vote via social media, either on Facebook and or Twitter. Just type the first and last name of your player or their Twitter handle with the hashtag WNBA ballot, and your vote will count. You guys can vote 10 times per day for your favorite player on social media. So again, Chris, the WNBA, man, continues to impress with their All-Star game, man, where it's an actual game. We're not playing half-assed basketball. We're actually having some effort being shown. It's a close game. And now, Chris, you can vote over social media, vote on the go, and vote online, man. So let's keep voting, man. You got 28 days, everyone. So, again, you got 28 more days to vote. So, again, vote online, WNBA.com/ASB, on the go on your WNBA Center Court app or on social media, Facebook or Twitter. 10 times per day, first and last name or their Twitter handle with the hashtag WNBA ballot. Chris, the WNBA All-Star Game will be held July 19th, 12:30 p.m. from the U.S. Airways Center in Phoenix, Arizona, with the Mercury will be hosting their second All-Star Game. Chris, again, we're going to talk about the All-Star Game here real quick, man, before we cut out here and go to Sparks Fam. But again, man, what you saw from last year's All-Star Game. I mean, we know that there was, Vines and YouTube videos during the game. There was a lot of, Chris, a lot of different things that we saw last year, man. But what you took away from it, man, is the WNBA All-Star Game now officially your favorite All-Star Game to watch out of all the pro sports in, I guess, the entire sports world?
Just awesome. They play 100%, not like the NBA where they don't play defense. Yeah, and also a lot of funny stuff, just like last season when Candace Parker stink face.
Chris, the only two All-Star games I will vote for and or watch is the WNBA and Major League Baseball, Chris, because baseball is baseball. It's never leaving me because I played the sport for 20. I was born and raised with the sport. But Chris, I mean, looking at it fully here, man, is baseball and the WNBA are the only two sports that don't change the format and they don't have the same amount of effort, Chris, where everybody plays the same way, Chris. I mean, there's no half-ass effort. They put all their heart and soul into the game. Because, Chris, you look at the other ones. Okay, you can name okay, we'll go to the obvious one, Chris, of the NFL Pro Bowl. That's not even a football game, man. They might as well play two-hand touch because you can't hit anybody, so hard, this or that. Might as well be two-hand touch on the beach instead of being played like an actual football game. The NBA All-Star Game, Chris, finishes like 200 to 199 because everyone's all standoffish and there are a bunch of pussies out there playing defense. And then the NHL All-Star Game, Chris, is like a damn indoor soccer game. It's like 15 to 11. There's no body checking. There's no action there. And, Chris, the one that won't be talked about is the Major League Soccer All-Star Game, Chris, where they play a team from Europe and they get beat like 12-0. So, I mean, Chris, I don't care what anyone says. WNBA and MLB All-Star Games, Chris, are the two best to watch, regardless of what anyone else out there says, man, because what we saw last year, Chris, and I kind of wish I still had the All-Star Game from last year, man, on my DVR, but I don't. Because, Chris, it was a very – okay, we know that the game was played like an actual regular season game. We had players diving out of bounds. We actually had some effort being shown, some hard fouls and some stuff like that. But then again, we had, Brittany Griner being BG was being a photographer for WNBA.com, taking photos of DT on the bench. We had the pregame dunk fest, the rookie dance-off before the game. We had, the referee Cam Chris, poor Lamont Simpson, my man out there, man, having to wear the damn GoPro last season. And then, of course, Chris, we had, Ace and Angel Chris, breaking out the guns last season, man. So, Chris, I think I was laughing more so than actually rooting for the West to win because there was just too many funny gimmicks last year, man. And, hopefully the WNBA All-Star Game, Chris, continues to be this way, man, where, but tough play, a good game, but still, though, man, you have all the shenanigans and stuff on the court. Players are, I mean, whether we've got, players being photographers, man, we have, we got, Chris, I really feel bad for Lamont Simpson. I mean, he's my favorite WNBA official, man, but, I mean, wearing that damn referee cam last year was kind of weird. I mean, I know that baseball did that one time, Chris, in 1999 where they had the catcher wear a similar camera like that in the back in the 90s on Fox. So, Chris, I mean, it looks like, Chris, the WNBA, Chris, is more so, they're more aimed at engaging the fans at home, whether it's, live tweets during the game, it's, IG photos or whatever it is, Chris. But I think they're more so, Chris, trying to get the audience at home more involved with the game, where they can send in tweets to players or whatever. They have, the exclusive interviews, Chris, in huddle, in huddle audio, Chris. So, I mean, this, Chris, in my view, is the better All-Star game to watch, and we just hope, Chris, that everyone does their due diligence, Chris, and votes for their favorite players to go to the All-Star game this year.
Yep.
All right, folks, so we'll take our only time out, folks. When we come back, we're stuck in a full court press again, folks. Another abbreviated edition of Sparks Fam is coming up next year, folks. So send in some tweets, some IG photos, some emails, and some live Q&A here, folks. Sparks Fam, the #1 show on the network, is coming up next year, folks, on the LA Sparks 365 network. So, folks, don't go away.